Thanks so much for joining me for tonight's set of scary stories. Remember, we post longer videos 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We read 30 minutes of short stories, then an hour and a half of rain sounds. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because we are always happy to get suggestions for new story ideas. If you enjoy the whisper voice, please tap the like button and leave a comment letting me know what voice style you want to hear next. With that, let's get on to our night of terror and dreams. Whispers in the willows. The iron gates screeched open, protesting their intrusion with a rusty wail that echoed across the overgrown grounds. The Blackwood Manor loomed before them, a Gothic monstrosity shrouded in a veil of twilight mist. Its skeletal silhouette, punctuated by vacant eye sockets of broken windows, sent shivers down Maddie's spine. Tessa, the self-proclaimed leader of the group, pushed open the creaking gate with a flourish. "Welcome home, suckers," she announced, her voice echoing eerily in the stillness. Her laughter, a bit too loud in the oppressive atmosphere, did little to mask the underlying nervousness Maddie detected in her eyes. Jackson, Tessa's ever so slightly clingy boyfriend, slung an arm around her shoulder. "Looks like something straight out of a horror movie," he said, trying to sound nonchalant, but Maddie noticed the way his grip tightened on Tessa's arm. John, the resident skeptic, adjusted his thick-rimmed glasses and offered a sardonic smile. "Relax, drama queens. It's just an old house." Tammy, the group's resident artist, remained silent, capturing the scene in a quick sketch on her pad, her dark eyes reflecting a deeper unease than Maddie dared to voice. Maddie, despite a gnawing sense of foreboding, couldn't deny the thrill of the adventure. They were spending a weekend in Blackwood Manor, a notorious local legend. The house stood deserted for decades, its past shrouded in whispers of tragic deaths and unexplained occurrences. Tessa, drawn by the macabre, had secured the weekend lease, promising a thrilling experience. The heavy oak door groaned open, revealing a cavernous interior choked with dust and shadows. Cobwebs hung like macabre tapestries, and the air was thick with a musky odor of dampness and decay. A single flickering bulb cast an eerie orange glow, barely illuminating the vastness of the entryway. An unsettling creak echoed from the upper floor as they stepped inside. John scoffed, a nervous edge to it. "Probably just settling," he mumbled. Tessa, however, let out a playful shriek. "See, ghosts already welcoming us." They explored the house, flashlight beams carving fleeting paths through the darkness. Rooms stood frozen in time, furniture draped in dust sheets, portraits of stern-faced ancestors staring down from mildewed walls. Each creak of the floorboards, each groan of the old house, amplified their anxiety. In the grand library, a row of leather-bound books lined the walls, their spines whispering forgotten stories. As Maddie ran her fingers across the rough spines, a book suddenly toppled over, landing open on a dusty floor. On the yellowed page, a chilling illustration stared back, a skeletal hand reaching out from the darkness. Maddie's breath hitched. John, looking over her shoulder, chuckled nervously. Probably staged for some tourist trap years ago. But even his voice lacked conviction. As night fell, they gathered in the sparsely furnished living room, a crackling fireplace offering little warmth against the creeping chill. Unease crackled in the air thicker than the smoke from the fire. Tessa, uncharacteristically subdued, suggested a game of truth or dare. The flickering firelight accentuated the shadows cast by their faces, making them appear more like grotesque masks than familiar friends. John, emboldened by a sip of something stronger he'd snuck in, dared Tammy to explore the attic alone. Tammy, never one to back down from a challenge, reluctantly agreed. As her silhouette disappeared up the creaking staircase, a collective silence descended upon the room. The minutes stretched into an eternity. Then a scream, raw and primal, shattered the stillness. A wave of terror washed over them, their blood running cold. John was the first to react, scrambling towards the stairs, the rest close behind. They burst into the attic to find it empty. The single window flapped wildly in the night breeze, and a sense of cold permeated the air, chilling them to the bone. Fear coiled tight in Maddie's stomach. Tammy was gone. Panic clawed at Maddie's throat. Tammy, always fearless, wouldn't just disappear. Her gaze darted around the dusty attic, landing on a ripped piece of fabric snagged on a splintered floorboard by the open window. It was a piece of Tammy's signature floral skirt. She must have fallen out, John muttered, his voice shaky. But the rational explanation did little to quell the knot of dread tightening in Maddie's gut. The window was too small for an adult to fall through. Tessa, her facade of bravado crumbling, sank to the floor, tears welling in her eyes. Jackson, usually the picture of bravado, looked like a scared child, pale and trembling. The search that followed was a nightmare. They scoured the overgrown grounds around the house, flashlights cutting through the darkness, revealing nothing but gnarled branches and rustling leaves that sounded like disembodied whispers. Every rustle, every groan of the house sent shivers down their spines. Exhausted and terrified, they huddled around the dying embers of the fireplace, their faces etched with despair. Sleep was non-existent. Every creak, every groan of the house sent them scrambling, hearts pounding in their chests. The following morning, a thick fog blanketed the grounds, muffling the world in an eerie silence. Fear had settled like a thick fog in their lungs, making it difficult to breathe. John, his skepticism shattered, suggested they call for help. But Tessa, her defiance flickering back, wouldn't hear of it. "We can't leave Tammy behind," she said, her voice hoarse. Jackson surprisingly agreed. "We have to find her." Maddie surprisingly found a sliver of strength amidst the terror. They couldn't give up on Tammy. They had to find their friend, alive, or... The rest of the day was a blur of frantic searching. They ventured into the dense woods behind the house, the gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, the rustling leaves whispering secrets. They checked the abandoned outbuildings, the carriage house, the decrepit shed, finding only cobwebs and dust. As dusk approached, casting long, menacing shadows, they stumbled upon a hidden path, barely visible beneath layers of fallen leaves. A morbid curiosity tugged at Maddie. The path seemed to beckon, leading deeper into the heart of the woods. John, his voice laced with fear, argued against it, but a sense of urgency propelled them forward. Tammy might be out there, hurt and alone. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the air grew colder, and the oppressive silence was broken only by the unsettling snap of twigs under their feet. The path led them to a clearing, where a circle of gnarled willow trees stood, their branches drooping like weeping figures. In the center of the circle, a moss-covered well stood like a gaping maw. A primal fear pulsed through a sense of unseen eyes watching from the darkness. Then, a faint moan, almost inaudible over the rustle of leaves, reached their ears. It came from the well. Maddie's breath hitched. Tammy. Ignoring John's pleas, Maddie rushed towards the well. John and Jackson followed hesitantly. Peering down the dark shaft, Maddie saw a faint gleam in the depths. With a shaking hand, she aimed her flashlight down the well. The sight that greeted her sent a scream ripping through the clearing. Tammy wasn't alone. A skeletal figure, its bony fingers clutching Tammy's limp form, clawed its way out of the darkness. John and Jackson recoiled in horror, but Maddie remained frozen, the scream dying in her throat. The figure, bathed in an unearthly green glow, its empty socket seeming to bore into Maddie's soul, emerged from the well, dragging Tammy's lifeless body with it. Before John and Jackson could react, the figure turned towards them, a ghastly grin revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. Maddie's vision swam as a blood-curdling shriek tore from the figure's throat. Panic seized them. John and Jackson bolted, crashing through the undergrowth like frightened deer. Maddie, frozen to the spot, could only watch in numb horror as the figure turned its attention back to Tammy's body. A primal instinct kicked in. She couldn't just stand there. With a desperate cry, she grabbed a heavy rock lying nearby and hurled it at the figure. The rock struck the creature's bony shoulder, eliciting a shriek of fury. It turned its malevolent gaze towards Maddie, its eyes burning with an unholy hunger. But before it could lunge towards her, a blinding light engulfed them. The clearing erupted in a cacophony of sound, the air crackling with energy. Maddie squeezed her eyes shut, shielding her face from the light. When she finally opened them, the clearing was empty. Disoriented and trembling, Maddie stumbled towards where the well had been. All that remained was a gaping hole in the ground, the earth around it scorched black. John and Jackson were nowhere to be seen. Had they escaped? Had the thing taken them? Tears streamed down Maddie's face, a mixture of grief for Tammy and the chilling fear of being utterly alone. The late afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long, ominous shadows. The clearing, once eerily silent, now echoed with the unsettling chirping of unseen creatures. Maddie knew she had to get out of there. But which direction? Panic threatened to consume her, but a flicker of defiance sparked within. She wouldn't give up. Tammy wouldn't want her to. Taking a deep breath, Maddie retraced their steps, relying on half-forgotten glimpses of the way they came. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent her heart leaping into her throat, but she pressed on. As darkness descended, the forest transformed into a labyrinth of menacing shadows. Exhausted and shivering, Maddie stumbled upon a narrow stream, its gurgling water a welcome sound in the oppressive silence. It had to lead somewhere. Following the stream, Maddie emerged from the woods onto a dirt road bathed in the pale moonlight. Relief flooded her. She had stumbled back to civilization. A farmhouse sat a short distance away. Hope surged through her. Help. She could finally get help. As she approached the farmhouse, a hound began barking ferociously. A tall figure emerged from the porch, a silhouette against the moonlight. Fear momentarily gripped Maddie, but the desperate need for help outweighed it. "Please," she gasped, her voice hoarse. "I need help. My friends. There was a house. Something happened." The figure, a woman with a kind face and eyes filled with concern, ushered Maddie inside. Warmth and the scent of baking bread enveloped her as she slumped onto a chair, tears flowing freely. As she recounted the horrifying events of the weekend, the woman, introducing herself as Sarah, listened patiently. Though Sarah offered a pot of tea and a sympathetic ear, there was a hint of skepticism in her gaze. "Blackwood Manor," she said, the name rolling off her tongue with a sigh. "That place has always been bad news. They say a dark spirit resides there, feeding on the souls of the unwary." Maddie clung to this explanation, a sliver of hope amidst the terror. Maybe it wasn't a monster, but something spectral, something Sarah might know a way to deal with. Sarah brewed a strange concoction of herbs and muttered words under her breath. "This won't bring your friends back," she said, her voice grave, "but it might offer protection if you ever encounter such entities again." The next day, the police arrived at Sarah's farmhouse, alerted by Sarah's call. They searched the grounds around Blackwood Manor, but found nothing, no trace of Tammy, John, or Jackson. The house itself, declared structurally unsound, was condemned and boarded up. Maddie returned to a world that felt alien, haunted by the memories of the weekend. She clung to the memory of Tammy's laughter and John's sarcastic wit. Jackson's panicked face flashed in her nightmares. Weeks turned into months, and the raw terror began to dull into a gnawing ache. Yet, the whispers in the willows remained, a constant reminder of the darkness and the loss. One starlit night, unable to sleep, Maddie found herself drawn to the edge of the woods where the path to the clearing began. A strange compulsion urged her forward. Against her better judgment, she stepped onto the path. The deeper she ventured, the colder the air grew, the silence more oppressive. Reaching the clearing, Maddie found the well gone, replaced by a smooth patch of earth. But she could still sense it, a presence, a malevolent energy lingering beneath the surface. Taking Sarah's charm from her pocket, she closed her eyes and whispered a silent prayer. A wave of warmth washed over her, dispelling the darkness. When she opened her eyes, the clearing seemed less menacing, bathed in the soft glow of the moon. Maddie knew they wouldn't return, but as she turned to leave, a lone willow branch swayed in the gentle breeze, whispering a message only she could hear. "Remember." Maddie walked away, the whispers fading behind her. She was the only survivor, forever marked by the darkness she had glimpsed. But she carried within her the memory of her friends, a testament to the enduring power of love and friendship, even in the face of the most horrific evil. The years crawled by, each one a slow, steady process of piecing Maddie back together. Though the nightmare subsided, the memory of Blackwood Manor clung to her like a shroud. She moved on with her life, finding solace in art, channeling the trauma into haunting landscapes and portraits that resonated with a raw, primal fear. One rainy afternoon, while unpacking boxes in her new apartment, Maddie stumbled upon a forgotten sketch pad. The faded drawings from Blackwood Manor had remained untouched, a time capsule of terror. As she flipped through the pages, a single new sketch fell out, one she didn't remember creating. It depicted a scene from above, a bird's eye view of the Blackwood Manor clearing. But something was different. Inscribed on the ground where the well once stood was a symbol, a swirling vortex encircled by a web of barbed wire. Recognition slammed into Maddie like a physical blow. It was the symbol Sarah had drawn in the protective charm. A rush of adrenaline surged through her. Sarah's words echoed in her mind. "This won't bring your friends back, but it might offer protection if you ever encounter such entities again." Was this a message? A clue left behind by the very entity that had taken her friends? The next day, News reports flooded the city. Blackwood Manor, despite being condemned, had mysteriously burned down overnight. The fire, deemed arson, had left nothing but a smoldering shell. But a single, chilling detail sent shivers down Maddie's spine. The fire investigator reported finding a strange symbol etched into the scorched earth at the center of the building, a swirling vortex encircled by barbed wire. Sleep deserted Maddie that night. Was this the end? Was the entity free? Days turned into weeks, the silence deafening. Then, on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday morning, a package arrived on Maddie's doorstep. Inside was a weathered leather-bound book, its pages filled with cryptic symbols and faded ink. A single note lay loose, the words scrawled in a familiar hand. Tammy. Maddie, it read. Help us. We're trapped. The book, it turned out, was a forgotten grimoire, detailing forbidden rituals and entities beyond human comprehension. One passage, highlighted in faded red, jumped out at Maddie, a binding ritual, powerful enough to trap a malevolent spirit, but requiring a blood sacrifice. Maddie's stomach lurched. Was this a trap? Was Tammy even alive? But the desperation in the note, the raw fear echoing from the pages, left her with no choice. She would fight. The ritual was complex, demanding focus and unwavering will. As she chanted the ancient words, the room resonated with an unseen power. The walls seemed to sweat, the air crackled with energy. Then, a chilling moan echoed from the depths of the apartment, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. A shadowy figure materialized in the center of the room, its skeletal form pulsating with an unnatural green light. Tammy's voice, distorted and weak, emanated from the figure. Maddie, help us. Tears welled up in Maddie's eyes. Ignoring the terror that threatened to consume her, she channeled Sarah's teachings, focusing her will on the symbol inscribed in the book. With a final, desperate cry, she completed the ritual. The room erupted in a blinding flash. The figure shrieked, a sound of pure primal rage, as it was yanked back into the open book, trapped within the symbol. The book slammed shut, its cover glowing a malevolent red. Maddie collapsed to the floor, drained, but with a flicker of hope. Crawling towards the book, she clutched it tightly. Tammy's voice, faint but clear, whispered, "Thank you, Maddie." The battle wasn't over. Maddie knew the entity wouldn't give up easily. But for the first time since Blackwood Manor, she didn't feel alone. She had Tammy's voice guiding her, fueling her determination. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky, Maddie made a silent vow. She would warn others of the lurking darkness. She would become a guardian, standing vigil against the whispers in the willows, a testament to the enduring power of love, friendship, and the unyielding will to survive. Whispers through the weeping willows. The moving truck rumbled past the wrought iron gates, depositing the Miller family onto the overgrown gravel driveway of Blackwood Manor. Sarah, standing on the porch with her two children, 10-year-old Lily and 8-year-old Michael, watched the dust billow behind the departing vehicle. A shiver ran down her spine, not from the cool autumn breeze, but from the oppressive presence of the house itself. Blackwood Manor loomed before them, a Gothic monstrosity with chipped gargoyles leering from the roofline, and ivy snaking its way up the crumbling brick walls. The windows, boarded up and dusty, resembled vacant eyes staring out at the world. Even in the golden glow of the late afternoon sun, the house radiated an air of decay and neglect. "It's different from the pictures," Michael muttered, his voice barely a whisper. Sarah forced a smile. Well, that's the beauty of old houses, Michael. They have a history. A history that sent chills down her own spine. A history she'd chosen to ignore in her desperation for a fresh start. John, her husband, emerged from the back of the truck, his usual boisterous enthusiasm muted. The house had a profound effect on him too, she realized with a pang. He clapped Michael on the shoulder with a feigned cheer. All right, troops, let's conquer this dusty old relic. The interior echoed the grim exterior. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that slanted through the cracks in the boarded-up windows. Cobwebs draped the high ceilings like macabre tapestries, and the air hung heavy with the smell of damp earth and forgotten memories. As they explored the cavernous rooms, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Unexplained chills crawled up her spine, the floorboards creaked under non-existent weight, and shadows seemed to writhe and dance at the edges of her vision. That night, after a supper of lukewarm sandwiches eaten in the dimly lit kitchen, the children confessed to seeing strange things. Lily spoke of a tall, shadowy figure glimpsed at the end of the hallway, while Michael insisted he'd seen a pale face staring at him from a boarded-up window. Sarah dismissed their claims, attributing it to their overactive imaginations, but their wide, fear-filled eyes belied easy dismissal. John, ever the pragmatist, suggested they board up the gaping hole in the roof that was likely letting in drafts of chilly autumn air. But as the nights progressed, the occurrences escalated. Doors slammed shut on their own, disembodied whispers echoed through the halls, and cold spots spread through the rooms faster than a fire could be lit. Sleep became a luxury they could no longer afford. Sarah sat huddled with the children, their faces pale in the flickering candlelight, listening to the symphony of unsettling sounds that emanated from the house. Was it just an old house settling, or something more sinister? One particularly stormy night, the wind howled like a banshee around the house. Sarah was jolted awake by a blood-curdling scream. Rushing into Michael's room, she found him whimpering under his covers, pointing at the window. There, he shrieked, his voice laced with terror. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. At the window, a ghostly figure pressed its face against the glass, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Then, with a wail that shattered the night, it vanished. John rushed in, his face ashen. What was it? He whispered, his voice hoarse with fear. Sarah shook her head, unable to speak. Their cheerful escape from the city life had turned into a living nightmare. The next morning, John didn't come down for breakfast. Sarah found him in the attic, staring at a dusty portrait. It depicted a handsome man with piercing blue eyes, an uncanny resemblance to John himself. In the corner, faded script identified him as Samuel Blackwood, the house's original owner. A tremor of unease snaked through Sarah. Was there a connection? Before John could speak, a floorboard creaked behind them. They spun around, hearts pounding, but the room was empty except for the swirling dust motes in the shafts of sunlight filtering through the cracks in the boarded-up window. Days blurred into a haze of terror. Shadows danced on the walls, whispers followed them through empty corridors, and the house itself seemed to pulsate with a malevolent energy. The children, pale and gaunt, barely slept, their eyes filled with haunted shadows. One evening, as the storm raged outside, John's behavior took a disturbing turn. His gaze became distant, his speech slow and slurred. When Sarah touched his hand, it felt icy cold. "Sarah," he said, his voice hollow, I can't leave." His words echoed in the dimly lit room, heavy with a chilling finality. Sarah's blood turned to ice. John's eyes, once filled with warmth and love, now held a vacant emptiness. "John, what are you talking about?" she forced out, her voice trembling. He didn't answer, his gaze drifting toward the dusty portrait in the corner. Sarah followed his line of sight and gasped. The eyes in the portrait, a perfect mirror of John's own, now burned with an unnatural light. A strangled cry escaped her lips as John's form flickered, becoming transparent at the edges. He reached out a hand, but it passed through hers, leaving behind a faint wisp of icy cold. "Help me," he whispered, a desperate plea emanating from the very fabric of the house. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. John was trapped, somehow tethered to the house by an unseen force. Panic clawed at her throat. She had to get her children out of there, away from this malevolent entity that had claimed their father. But the house pulsed around them, a suffocating presence that seemed to resist their escape. Days turned into a blur of frantic attempts and growing despair. Doors locked from the inside, windows inexplicably nailed shut, and the spectral figure of John continued to appear, his pleas growing fainter with each encounter. One night, Lily, her voice barely a whisper, revealed a horrifying discovery. While hiding in the attic, she'd found a hidden compartment containing a leather-bound book titled Blackwood Chronicles. Its brittle pages spoke of a dark ritual performed by Samuel Blackwood, a desperate attempt to achieve immortality by binding his soul to the house. A sliver of hope sparked within Sarah. If such a ritual existed, then maybe a reversal could be found. With trembling hands, she scoured the book, her heart sinking with each page that offered no solution. Then, on a page yellowed with age, a faint inscription caught her eye. An incantation, scrawled in a messy hand, promised the release of a bound soul, but warned of dire consequences if the ritual failed. There was no time to weigh the risks. Armed with a hastily memorized chant and a heart full of desperate hope, Sarah gathered her remaining strength. She would perform the ritual, hoping to sever the connection between John and the house. The ritual chamber was the attic, the air thick with dust and the lingering scent of decay. Candlelight flickered on the dusty portrait, its eyes seeming to follow her every move. With trembling hands, she set the book down and began to chant, her voice rising above the creaking of the house. A cold wind swept through the attic, the shadows twisting and contorting around her. The air crackled with a malevolent energy, threatening to engulf her. Suddenly, a monstrous figure materialized from the darkness. Samuel Blackwood, his decaying form pulsating with an unnatural light. A scream tore from Sarah's throat, but she steeled her resolve. The ritual had to be completed. Her voice hitched, but she continued the chant, pushing back against the overwhelming pressure of the entity's presence. The room erupted in a blinding flash. The entity shrieked in fury, the sound echoing through the house. When the light faded, Samuel Blackwood was gone, replaced by a faint, shimmering light emanating from the portrait. It pulsed with an otherworldly glow, then slowly faded away. Exhausted but elated, Sarah rushed to where John once stood. There was nothing. Had she succeeded? Relief washed over her, so potent it threatened to drown her in its wake. Then, a cold hand gripped her shoulder. She spun around, her heart hammering against her ribs. But there was nothing, just the silence of the house, a chilling hush that spoke of victory, but also of terrible loss. Sarah wept, her tears falling for her husband, lost to the darkness of Blackwood Manor. But amidst the grief, a flicker of fierce determination remained. She had to get her children out of there, away from the whispers that clung to the walls and the shadows that danced with secrets. With trembling hands, she gathered Lily and Michael, their faces etched with terror and confusion. They fled the house, the iron gates clanging shut behind them like a final, chilling note. Blackwood Manor stood alone, a silent monument to the darkness that resided within its walls. They rebuilt their lives, the scars of their horrific experience etched deep within them. Sarah never spoke of John, the loss too raw, the memory too painful. But a part of her knew he wasn't truly gone. He was forever bound to the house, a chilling reminder of the price they had paid for a fresh start. Years later, Lily, now a young woman, felt an inexplicable pull towards Blackwood Manor. Lily dreamt of dust-streaked windows, whispering hallways, and the chilling touch of a hand that wasn't quite hers. The pull towards Blackwood Manor intensified, manifesting as an ache in her chest that wouldn't subside. She shared her dreams with Michael, now a stoic young man haunted by childhood memories. "Don't go back, Lily," Michael pleaded, his voice laced with a fear he couldn't mask. "That place took Dad." But the feeling of incompleteness, the nagging sense that something remained unresolved, propelled Lily forward. Ignoring Michael's pleas, she gathered her courage and rented a room in a small town bordering Blackwood Manor's overgrown grounds. The house loomed larger than in her memory, its Gothic facade even more menacing under a leaden sky. The windows, once boarded up, were now vacant eyes staring out at the desolate landscape. As Lily approached the rusted gates, a flock of crows erupted from the gnarled branches of the weeping willows that lined the driveway, their caws echoing ominously. Pushing open the gate, she stepped onto the overgrown gravel driveway. The air hung heavy with the same oppressive silence she remembered from her childhood. Ignoring the prickles of unease on her skin, she walked towards the house, anticipation twisting with dread in her gut. The front door creaked open with a ghostly groan, as if welcoming her back. Hesitantly, Lily stepped inside. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight filtering through the grime-coated windows. The air was thick with the smell of decay and forgotten memories, triggering a potent wave of nausea. Everything looked the same. The echoing hallway, the chipped staircase, the dusty portraits lining the walls. But a subtle difference hung in the air, a feeling of emptiness. The malevolent energy that had once pulsed within the house was gone. Lily explored the house, a morbid curiosity guiding her steps. The rooms remained untouched, frozen in time. In the attic, however, she found a change. The portrait of Samuel Blackwood was gone, replaced by a blank space on the wall. A cold wind swept through the attic, sending shivers down her spine. A voice, barely a whisper, echoed in her ear. "Help me, Lily." Lily's heart pounded in her chest. The voice, though faint, sounded eerily familiar. It couldn't be, could it? She remembered the spectral John, his pleas for release. But the ritual had been complete, hadn't it? As if drawn by an unseen force, Lily found herself back in John's old study. A hidden compartment behind the bookshelf, previously unnoticed, revealed a weathered journal. Its brittle pages spoke of John's final days, his growing desperation as his spirit became tethered to the house. The last entry sent a jolt of terror through her. John had mentioned an incomplete ritual, a desperate act of defiance against the dark magic that bound him. He wrote of hiding a fragment of his soul within the house, hoping it would one day be found, a beacon for someone who could complete the release. Tears welled up in Lily's eyes. John wasn't entirely gone. A part of him remained, trapped within the house, waiting for her. She knew what she had to do. She spent the next week scouring the dusty manor, deciphering John's cryptic notes hidden within the worn journal. The ritual was complex, demanding dedication and courage. But Lily, fueled by a fierce love and a determination to right her mother's sacrifice, persevered. Under the pale glow of the full moon, Lily stood in the center of the attic, chanting the ancient words echoing from the pages of the journal. The air crackled with unseen energy, the dust swirling around her like spectral figures. A blinding light erupted, engulfing the attic. When it faded, a transparent figure materialized before her. John, his form weak and translucent, yet undeniably him. Relief and sorrow warred within Lily as she reached out to him. "Lily," he whispered, his voice filled with gratitude. "You came." Tears streamed down her face as she embraced his spectral form. The house, once a malevolent entity, remained silent, the darkness seemingly vanquished. With a final soft glow, John's form dispersed, leaving behind a feeling of peace that settled over the house, a final goodbye. Lily knew he wasn't truly gone, but a part of him had found release, reunited with the light. Leaving Blackwood Manor behind, Lily walked away with a newfound resolve. The house had taken a part of her family, but it had also awakened a strength she never knew she possessed. She would carry the memory of her father and the lessons learned within the walls of the chilling manor, forever vigilant against the whispers in the willows. The darkness might lurk in the shadows, but she, now a guardian, would stand ready to face it.